let's get into what a lot of people are certainly interested in, which is additional citizenships
Mm.
and really good visas for travel and access to some great countries that we like to go to. What are some of the top programs for citizenships by investment right now? I mean, I know it's always revolving and new ones are coming
Yeah.
into the picture. What's top of the list right now?
Well, I think it really depends on what you're looking for. I mean, when you have the guy who wants to get out very quickly or he needs something very quickly, I mean, the Caribbean programs work fine. I mean, they've had a price war in recent years where you've got a number of programs that are now basically $100,000 for a single applicant, not too much above that for a family of four, even if you're married, for example. So I think those can still be functional. They're commoditized programs. They're relatively straightforward. What I look at is kind of under the radar programs, not in a bad way, but just programs that what we call fast track naturalization. One program that's interesting to me right now that's kind of commoditized is Turkey. It's a very interesting tier C, as I would call it, passport. You can't go to the EU, you can't go to most of the Western world without a visa, but you can go pretty much everywhere else because it's such a big country and they negotiate good deals. So Turkey's a $250,000 real estate investment, and unlike most of these programs, you can basically invest in whatever you want. So you're not wasting much money as long as you do it properly. If you go on, turkeyproperties.com, you'll deal with one of these sales outfits and you'll pay a fortune. But when we look at it, we just sent we sent one of our team members with a client last week, and we found some really nice deals for them, and that's a good deal. There's what's called paper citizenship, where you go and get residence permit in a country and come back. Those are certainly changing all the time. Ancestral passports, if you can get one, are good. Most of those are in Europe. We've also recently helped someone with Mexico. Vietnam, although I think we skipped on that one. I don't think they really wanted to be Vietnamese. Those sometimes take a while. So if the goal is to get a passport very quickly, even though you think, oh, I'm entitled to Italian citizenship, I recently told a guy, let's get one of these Caribbean passports first because you might take 3 years to get your Italian one. I like the idea of a passport portfolio. I think that's a very interesting concept to have more than one.
How about out in the Pacific Oceans? You mentioned one earlier, and I forget how to pronounce it. Vanuatu or something?
Yeah, Vanuatu. I was there,
Vanuatu.
and I talked to some of the folks there, and I said, listen, I mean, they have multiple programs. So Vanuatu has these conflicting programs, and the price is always changing, and there's always a rumor some guy in China has a special deal to sell it for less, or someone's buying in bulk, or this or that. It's really confusing. They've done a bad job marketing it. It's an interesting country. I think some of their benefits have been eroded. I mean, 4 of the 5 Caribbean countries now have visa-free access to Russia, for example, which is one of the benefits of Vanuatu. So that's less interesting now. It's interesting travel to the UK, to Europe, to parts of Asia. Not so good in the Americas, actually pretty bad in the Americas. It's a tax-free country that's somewhat neutral, more so than the Caribbean countries, but they've just done to be honest, they've done such a bad job with it. They could do so much better. And I know. I just had a guy, one of my guys in Vanuatu. He's a great guy. He messaged me the other day. He said, when are you coming back? We should talk to the citizenship program. And I just said, they need to get it cleaned up.
Mm. I was just taking a look at passports the other day and how many visa-free countries each passport can get you into, and I think in kind of standard Western countries you can get somewhere around 160 to 180. I was looking at, I spent a lot of time in Thailand, not that I have a lot of desire to get a Thai passport, but just happened to look that one up. It's one of the worst passports in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, you can only get into 24 countries or something visa-free. I mean, it's absolutely horrible compared to any type of passport most of the listeners are holding. Why is it so bad? Is that just a bad job of the government going out and trying to get visa-free travel, or is it something else?
Here's the thing that I think for those of us from the West, it's almost taboo to say, but it's very true. Every country in the world views itself at a certain level. If your country is above that level, they often welcome you with open arms. If your country's below that level, they shun you. And so this is why the United States and European Union have so many countries. Now, part of it's reciprocity. You can come to our country, we can come to yours. But I mean, if you look at things like overstay rates, or people who are working illegally, or people who are going and claiming amnesty, those are issues. But the other thing that no one wants to talk about is there are stereotypes. I mean, I remember, we have a team that's, from Serbia, from North Macedonia. We're starting to go into Ukraine now. We had a couple of people at one point. They were traveling around. They have that Eastern European look. They're like almost 6 feet tall. These women, and they're young. And the stereotype in many of these countries is, oh, you're here to model. Where's your work permit? Or even worse, the next level worse, right? And so there's these stereotypes. If you're a good-looking, 25-year-old woman, people make stereotypes, and it's not fair, but it is what it is. Certainly there's been things like wars that have caused it. I'm here with, our videographer who is Serbian. It's one of the few countries that needs a visa to get into Malaysia because Malaysia sided with Bosnia back in the war. So there's things like that. But I think the biggest issues are overstay rates. You can go and look at in the United States. They have the rate overstay rate. And so the more likely you are to overstay, to work, to go and do stuff. In the U.S., by the way, Israel's their best friend. They always say, oh, our best friend Israel. Israelis can't come to the U.S. without a visa. Why? 2 reasons. Number one, they discriminate against Arab Americans going to Israel, so there's that reciprocity against them. Number 2, you ever go to the mall and there's all those people who just got out of the IDF and they're saving money to go to university and they're selling those soaps, come and try my soaps. They're all working illegally, and so the U.S. is like, we don't want people coming, get a visa. And so if you're 23 years old and Israeli, you're probably not getting a visa.
It's a complicated system.
It is complicated, yeah. By the way, Serbia, just to mention while we mentioned Serbia, they've done an incredible job of negotiating visa-free travel. They've got an excellent passport. If you don't care about the UK or the US, they've got an excellent passport because, yes, I think they have done a good job negotiating.
How many countries would you say right now are available to get citizenship through some type of straightforward investment? Not a 20-year thing, or right. You get a visa and then you get citizenship 10 years later. Just buy the passport. And you're off.
I mean, if you look at passports that are have commoditized programs, it's about 12 right now, maybe 13. I guess Egypt has some really overpriced deal. Then if you look at programs where, hey, come and put $50,000 in government bonds, and we'll give you a residence permit, and 5 years from now you can apply, and maybe you should speak a few words of the language, and we're not really going to check, as of today's standards, where you were during those 5 years. There's probably another 15, 20 countries. I think, again, it depends on your nationality. There are certain countries that are much, Albania, for example. Only Americans get a 5-year residence permit, and they don't really check where you are because they're so U.S. friendly. So there are certain countries that have favorable terms, and generally those are Western countries.
And what about the cheapest? What's the cheapest one that you know of available? Is it somewhere in the Caribbean?
Well, again, I mean, so this kind of fast-track naturalization, it's always kind of a case-by-case basis. We do those. We don't really talk about them because, you look at what happened in Paraguay a couple of years ago. Everyone and their mother was talking about Paraguay as fast, easy, cheap, and the country said, we don't want to be known as this kind of dumping ground. So I don't necessarily publicize the stuff because, they run their course eventually anyway. The cheapest program that's just straightforward is $100,000, Dominica, St. Lucia. If you are more than one person, it's Antigua and Barbuda. They've got kind of a weird physical presence requirement you've got to do in the first 5 years to finalize your passport. But any of those are in the low 6 figures, and you can get them very quickly. The cheapest one that I did get a couple years ago that's been suspended was Comoros, and people kind of joked about that. But it was a nice gap filler because it was an extra passport. I've used it in Singapore, I've used it in Malaysia, I've used it, and now I have a residence permit in Malaysia. But I've used it in countries that some of my other Tier B passports I couldn't get into before I got St. Lucia. And that was $45,000. I don't think we'll see anything like that again at that price.
I've not heard of Comoros.
Comoros was, it ran, I don't know when it started exactly. I don't know, early 2010s. It started with a bulk deal with some of the Gulf states where they wanted to get rid of the Badoons, the stateless Badoons, and they wanted to give them citizenship so they could deport them. And I haven't followed that process entirely. Obviously, there's some human rights issues there. But yeah, they sold it. There were a couple different channels, kind of like Vanuatu. We went through the pretty clean channel. I've talked to the UK embassy, and we always make sure everything's on the up and up. I guess there were some other guys on the ground doing some weird stuff, and so they just they shut it down. But if you have a passport, it's still intact. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.